Hello, my name is Jerry Rudman. I'm one of the Psi Beta student presenters that's helping the introductory psych instructors this year. We are presenting a series of lessons on scientific reasoning to all the introductory psychology students. And lesson number 1 is going to be on distracted driving and how the research psychologists have studied this phenomenon of driving just while distracted by a cell phone. One goal of psychology is to conduct controlled experiments that let us understand the effects of something on an outcome. So in this lesson, again, we'll be looking at cell phone use and driving. Let's start out by seeing a video by the National Transportation Safety Bureau. It's about a 6.5-minute video. The research on distracted driving shows that it's a cognitive issue, not a motor issue. And what does that mean? Well, if it was a matter of not being able to physically control the steering wheel while holding an object, then hands-free devices would solve the problem. But it's a cognitive issue. That is, talking while driving can be a problem even if you're not holding the phone. We know this because of research data from psychological studies, and the psychological research is one way that psychology can inform and help society. This is a graph or a plot of what's called a correlational study. So here you see mobile phone subscriptions per population, and you can go to different cities and get that and then plot this out and then plot out the number of vehicle deaths per 100,000. This shows that it's pretty much no relationship at all. It suggests that. In fact, if you use the best fit line here, even shows maybe slight negative correlation. That is, people subscribe more to cell phones, the number of deaths go down. However, that's on the surface, that would be evidence, but this is a correlational study. There could be many, many other factors that obscure the real pattern. In this case, it could be that the number of cell phone subscriptions increased, but so did safety in the vehicles overall. So fewer people actually died in the accidents, even though the accident may have been caused by using cell phones. So we need to look at what's called experimental data, which we will introduce in this lesson, and talk about that. I'm going to take a turn here, which is going to seem a little odd, but I'm going to talk about it, but it does relate. There's this guy named Kingsbury who published an article in the Huffington Post. He claims he found a relation between early childhood education and crime. He concluded we're taking children away from their mothers too soon, and therefore, they're in kindergarten, and then they get out and they're damaged, and that they are more likely to contribute to crime. Here's how he got his data, how he explained it. He said, I went to the Department of Education, I got a list of kindergartens, and I went to the safety department and got a crime report. In general, the towns with a kindergarten had a 400% more crime than other towns in the same county. In every county, the towns and cities with a kindergarten had more crime. Can you think of any other explanation for his conclusions that towns with kindergartens are more likely to have crime? I think you probably can. Let's take a look at what he found. Was probably a spurious correlation. These are correlations between two factors or two variables that vary together, but often to conclude that one may be causing another is humorous, but not very likely. And these are all from a website of spurious correlations that you can visit on your own. But here's an example. I'm going to give you just 3 examples here. This is cheese consumed here. As you see, it goes up. Higher you go on this graph, the more cheese. This is over time, years. And these are deaths by people who got tangled in their bed sheets. Now, I don't know if this is world data or U.S. data, and I don't know how you die by getting tangled in your bed sheet, but maybe you do if you're an Alzheimer's patient or an infant. I don't know. But you see cheese consumed is the red line. The black line is deaths by bedsheet, and they do correlate quite well. Here's another one. People who drowned after falling out of a fishing boat over here over time. Now, there's not a lot of those, and it's good that they're going down. And then the marriage rate in Kentucky, that's going down too. I don't know why that is, but the thing is they correlate really well. Maybe as people don't get married in Kentucky, there's fewer that fall out, but I kind of doubt that's the relationship. One final one. This is U.S. import of crude oil from the number of barrels from Norway, here in red, over time. And this driver's killed in a collision with a railway train over here. And you can see these correlate pretty well too. It might be a little silly to think that one causes the other. So let's get back to this graph. This is the one we looked at a while ago. It's correlational data that suggests that mobile phone use and traffic fatalities are unrelated, but there's many uncontrolled variables, and I'd like you to think of, if you can think of any now. We're going to stop and have you share some of your ideas. Think about it and share some ideas. Here's some that I came up with. Younger drivers are less experienced, and maybe they're just more accident prone in general, so having them talk on a cell phone adds to the problem. Another confounding variable could be just simply the amount of traffic. Heavy traffic requires greater attention to driving, and so maybe the cell phone talking, that doesn't make any difference, but in heavy traffic it could be bad. Another factor, how tightly do the police enforce cell phone use when people are driving and using them? The extent that the law is enforced. If it's enforced a lot, it could weaken the relationship. And there's, of course, other ones that you may know of here. So finally, we have a closing interactive. In the closing interactive, people will be downloading and reading a 2-page article and identifying the independent variables and the dependent variable. These will be explained in the play, pause it interactive, I hope. Were the participants randomly assigned? And finally, each student will be asked, based upon the study, do you think the researchers could conclude that a change in the IV, the independent variable, caused a change in the dependent variable? And then there's a table there that will be used, may be confusing to them, but we will close on the PowerPoint with that. So, with the lesson closing, I'd just like to say the benefit of experimental studies. In experimental studies, you can isolate one aspect of a cell phone use and use the experimental method to assess its impact on driving. In a true experiment, the independent variable, which we shortcut call it IV, is manipulated, and participants are randomly assigned to groups. So, just a couple of key points to leave you with. There are a limit to correlational studies. In a correlational study, it is impossible to show conclusively that something about cell phone use causes an accident. The benefit of experimental studies. You can isolate one aspect of cell phone use and use the experimental method to assess the causal impact on driving. So in a true experiment, the independent variable is manipulated and participants are assigned to groups. This just shows what happened when the person was in a conversation with a passenger in this driving simulation that you read about. That was one thing, but when they were in a cell phone conversation, their performance dropped to about 60% of which is quite interesting. Also, this table introduces some things called statistics and some other variables here. This indicates there was no significant difference in change in driving speed when the person was either talking or not talking over a cell phone. But there was a difference in the distance following. It looks like they increased their distance, but they weren't paying attention, so they got further behind. And that's we'll talk about this another time, but this is a less than 0.05 probability that there was no effect of the being in the experimental condition and talking over a cell phone. In other words, there was an effect. So that's a typical p-value when you have a significant difference in finding in a psychological study. And then change in the amount of lane deviation. You can see that while talking on a cell phone, people did change lanes more often. Not change lanes, but deviated within the lane. And I see evidence of that as I'm driving along too. I think people are going to like run into me sometimes, and then they straighten out their car, but they've been texting or talking on the cell phone. So thank you for being with us. This is the source for the information presented in this lesson, and we hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you in lesson 2, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks. Your instructor will let you know. Thanks so much, and have a great day.